Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? It is day 16 of RPG A Day 2021, and the word I've chosen from the four possibilities today is villain. And RPGs are often full of villains, aren't they? If they aren't outright evil, they're at least people that are getting in the way of our goals, our characters' goals. They're some kind of adversary in one way, shape, or form. They're in our way. They're an obstacle. And depends on the game. Sometimes it's really hard to figure out who they are. When we played Circle of Hands, sometimes it's really hard to figure out, and you have to figure out for yourself. Well, is there a bad guy here? Maybe there's several. Take some deducing, and or you have to decide for yourself. Other times, nothing is as obvious as who the villain is or who the villains are. They're just flashing lights at that point, and they can be a lot of fun. They can add a lot of flavor to a game. In our The Sky is No Limit campaign of Leagues of Adventure, uh, Lieutenant Armbruster Credenza, or is it Spinoza, or all the various names we give him. He is a really flavorful, recurring villain that shows up, and it just gives our characters a hard time. And it's funny, like he's one of those guys you love to hate, and as much as our characters hate to see him, as players, we love to see him because he's very entertaining and it's cool. It's very, very genre appropriate to have a villain, an adversary like that show up and just be a thorn in our side. That's really, really cool. Now, it's one of the things, though, we can fall into the trap of not wanting to kill our darlings and wanting to protect these villains and make sure that nothing happens to them so we can use them again, or and this is going to happen as game masters and as players. And for the most part, I tend to fall into the camp that says don't be afraid to kill your darlings, let the dice fall where they may, let things happen, don't script anything, don't push in a certain direction, certainly don't protect somebody. I remember like playing, I think it was GoldenEye. I never got very far in that video game. I like to play it in versus mode, but there's that one scene in the first session, whatever you're supposed to do, where this one villain, he runs around. You can't kill him. You can shoot him dead on, but he's supposed to be in the next chapter. It's you can't kill that guy. So and for the most part, I tend to be in the camp of, well, don't do that. Let things happen. Let's see where things show up, right? However, there are some genres where it's very appropriate for the heroes and the villains to not die, to cheat death and show up and survive, despite incredible odds. And the game Broken Compass by Two Little Mice, which we played a three-part one-shot of, and are planning to play again eventually. And we'll probably rotate game master duties on that. And I did back that Kickstarter, so I don't have anything physical to hold up. But I do have the PDFs now, which is pretty cool. That game is emulating things like 90s action movies, and it's very appropriate in that type of genre for the heroes, the villains, for somebody to apparently die and then come back in the next movie, and it come with a like a Munchausen worthy tale of how they survived, being washed away by the current or falling off that cliff or, being pulled under the water by this Nile crocodile or saltwater crocodile or, whatever it happens to be, somehow, even though they were in the building that exploded, there's no way they could have survived. There's some way that they did. They made it out of there, and maybe they're scarred or whatever it happens to be, but they made it, and that's how they got back. And this game, the text of Broken Compass, spells it out in no uncertain terms. That yes, there's a point where your character dies. However, it's acceptable to bring a character back if we all agree it would be cool, and so they might show up the next venture. And so we decided what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and it certainly doesn't say as much about the villains as it does about the player characters, but in our session, in our one shot, we were introduced to four adversaries that became quite interesting and engaging. And in fact, the adversaries are villains that are part of the mechanics and procedures of that game. It's part of the genre. There's specific things these adversaries are supposed to be, and they are clearly villains. And so during our play, two of them seem to have met. They got their just desserts, right? But we talked about it, and we all know that they're going to show up again, and they're probably going to be pretty mad. And honestly, we can't wait to see them again. That's very, very appropriate. And by the same token, I hope that Armbruster Credenza sticks around, and the dice don't kill him, or that something doesn't happen, because he's really entertaining, and he's also very genre appropriate. And he's not the kind of guy that's going to put himself in danger in the first place. So villains are awesome. And, while I normally don't advocate protecting them, there's some times and some games where it lets you know this is what you're supposed to do and it's genre appropriate. Pretty cool stuff. Take it easy.